The Jehovah's Witnesses, founded on a lie from the start. The organization should have been abolished after the 1914 catastrophe, a prophecy that predicted the world was going to catastrophically end, of which the Jehovah's Witnesses would be saved, and they would mop up the billions of bodies that were left after God had wiped out the world. Millions of members sold their assets, properties, investments, savings, and handed them into the watchtower. In 1914, when the prophecy failed, tremendous doubt, unbelief, a lot of people were angry and tried to sue the organization that had nothing left to do it with. They turned to relatives, and the relatives turned their back on them because of the foolishness of their decisions. The Watchtower never said sorry or had any remorse. They just continued publishing their Watchtower magazine propaganda. And as a consequence, and we don't know how many, with the figures were never, probably there was no data on it. But what we do know is there's a possibility that thousands of people subject to the gifting of everything they had to the Watchtower committed suicide, had mental breakdowns, turned on each other in derision. How did we believe this? How could this be so wrong? We trusted this organization. Many became sick, ill, unable to recover financially from their foolish decisions, motivated by the deceitfulness of somebody's fantasy. Now, the fantasy of the world ending in 1914 is very similar to the fantasy of a psychopath or a narcissist. So what we do know is the Watchtower, the Jehovah's Witnesses, follow fantasies that are psychopathic and at least malignant, narcissistic. This then has a tremendous impact on the way in which they think, the way in which they perceive, and the way in which they act, because they try and act in line with the lies and deceit, propaganda, and sick policies of the Watchtower organization. Could you imagine you put yourself into the shoes of those people, those Bible students who believed that the world was going to end in 1914, wholeheartedly prepared, all assets sold, business put in order, most of it towards the Watchtower, only to wake up at the start, if you made it, a lot of them committed suicide, only to wake up at the start of 1915 to realize you had been completely duped. You catastrophized your life. You put yourself into a catastrophe via decisions that just didn't correlate with how life was supposed to work. And this is what the Watchtower organization do. they undermine all sanity. You have to realize this. There's no sanity in the Jehovah's Witnesses. It's all based on fantasy, unrealistic theology. Theological abuse abounds. And this theological abuse, I'm trying to find a stronger word too, viewers, besides abuse. It's a theological, psychopathic, malicious form of deception that is so blatant and so well done that the victims of it have no comprehension that it's so blatant that you have to wholeheartedly believe it or not believe it at all. It's just so blatantly wrong. It's hard to describe. It's like somebody saying to you or encouraging you, like Satan did the Lord Jesus Christ when he stood looking over the city, and Satan said, I offer you the world, and Jesus said, no thanks, I'm just going to serve the Father. Copy later. With the Jehovah's Witnesses, it's not unsimilar to that. They're encouraging people to jump off the top of a cliff or the top of a building and promising them they're going to be okay. And if you don't believe it, you're not a part of this organization. We'll shun you. We will keep family members and convince them not to speak to you anymore. You'll be alienated. This is what's happening to Jehovah's Witnesses. They're suffering from severe mental health issues. I mean, severe psychopathic mental health issues where they're suffering post-traumatic stress disorder or complex post-traumatic stress disorder from the psychological and theological abuse. Again, I don't think abuse is the right word. Theological trauma that comes from the abuse, and I mean deep-seated, mind-harming trauma from the lies that these people are forced to believe. And once you're in and your family's in, and it becomes part of the family culture, if you wake up to the lies and deceit and all the rest of it, which is very unfortunate once you've invested so much of yourself along with your family into the cult. Remember, it's called a cult. It is not a Christian religion. It is a demonic cult. You've got to understand this. This is what's happening to Jehovah's Witnesses. They're not Christian. That's the only way I can put it. They're completely and totally and utterly deceived. You can't go out into the community, particularly in a Christian country, Australia, although it's multicultural, it is still a Christian country, and think that Jesus is Michael the Archangel. That's like somebody walking around Graceland saying Elvis Presley was Michael Jackson. It just does not and cannot make sense. But the Jehovah's Witnesses, they believe that Michael the Archangel is the Messiah, God manifest in the flesh, Emmanuel, God with us, the God known as the Word of God becoming flesh and manifested among us, Jesus of Nazareth, the Jewish Messiah, the wonderful counselor, the mighty God, it says in Isaiah, Prince of Peace, is apparently, and I don't say this with any disrespect, Michael the Archangel. I don't think Michael the Archangel would be impressed with that at all. As a matter of fact, I think Michael the Archangel would be up in arms and in some way trying to get through to these deceived individuals that are writing this stuff. You got to remember, it's some blokes come up with the idea for some strange reason that Michael's the Archangel. How would you, whoever you are that's listening to this right now, like to be told, well, you're your auntie, or you're somebody else, and they're just standing there going, no, you're not John Smith, you're Sarah McGillian. No, you're not John Smith, you are Sarah McGillian. This is how bent and twisted and how easily it is to deceive the Jehovah's Witnesses. You do not want to follow the lead of a Jehovah's Witness, because before you start, they're deceived. And I don't mean partially, I mean completely and utterly deceived. I mean deceived to the point where it's the counselling and therapy that's required once these people wake up to the fact that they've been totally duped could go on for a lifetime. Some people never recover. They have nervous, mental breakdowns from the emotional vandalism that takes place via the way in which this cult works. And just because it's all presented nicely and there's all this wonderful aura around being a Jehovah's Witness and all this rubbish and stuff, that just doesn't make it right. It doesn't wash it clean. It's wicked, forlorn, worn out, and has found its way through its critical errors where people on a daily basis are committing suicide. They're going into hospitals and the doctors and the nurses are just going to get counselling themselves because people are convinced not to have blood transfusions, and they're dying by the thousands through this false doctrine made up by the Watchtower. Some bloke just made it up and they took it on board. Yeah, we'll take that. Oh, you can't have it. Yeah, we'll take that on board. Put that through. And people started to die. Oh, I believe that, yes. Sally didn't have a blood transfusion. She's gone now. Praise Jehovah. And they'll go so far as letting their children die and advertise it in the Watchtower. Oh, praise be to Jehovah. Little 6-year-old Simon Johnson, whatever, has given his life by not having a blood transfusion. Can you see how psychopathic that is? It's psychopathic. It doesn't even... If you're told not to eat blood, that has absolutely nothing to do with the medical part of life. Oh, the Jehovah's Witnesses are all over the doctors and getting help when they're sick, but need a blood transfusion? Oh no, I'll just check out. Yeah, praise be to Jehovah. And the devil's sitting there on his perch going, ha 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 ha, another one. These people are crazy. He knows they're crazy. the Jehovah's Witnesses. See, they're so unaware of how deceived they are. They're no different to the desperate addict whose behavior is just, and mind has gone forlorn, needing more. And then the addict wakes up and goes, oh, no, hang on a sec, this is killing me. I can't have this anymore. It's actually, no, I love it, but it's killing me. I'm getting the rush, I'm getting all the chemicals in the mind and the buzz and all that, but it's killing me. Viewers, ladies and gentlemen, the Watchtower, the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Jehovah's Witnesses are the accessory to the fact, if there ever is a criminal investigation, all the HLC people will go scurrying, they'll have to burn those records because they're accessory to the fact of murder, because the blood doctrine is not biblical. It just is not. Anybody can tell. As a matter of fact, judges now are starting to step in. Doctors and nurses are bringing this to the attention of the law, and they're forcing the Jehovah's Witnesses children to have blood transfusion. They're overriding the demonized parents. And what's happening is, when these children are having the transfusions, then the Watchtower shuns the parents, because the court orders forced the child to have the transfusion by way of sanity, and then the Watchtower turns around and says, well, your son or your daughter has had a blood transfusion and we can no longer accept your participation in our cult because you allowed that person to live by law. Do I really need to explain this any further? I think it's a matter of awareness now. Keep people aware that this organisation is murderous. The HLC team members, I hope they're on record, because when the governments realise that the blood policy is a theological lie, just a blatant theological lie, these people are going to be accessories to the fact, to the encouragement and assistance of suicide. They'll be criminalised. They'll be locked up for manslaughter, assist. And the world's waking up. The world looks at the Jehovah's Witnesses and they're frightened. They fear people when they go out in the carts. They're embarrassed when they go out on the carts. They're taking their propaganda out and trying to affiliate people to the organisation. They're paranoid to boot. They don't want to know your questions. They don't want to deal with the Bible. They only want to deal with their propaganda. If you're a Jehovah's Witness or an ex-Jehovah's Witness and you're listening to this, whatever part of the journey you're on, whatever amount of trauma and confusion and mental health troubles you're having, just accept that you were deceived, severely and deliberately deceived. Your money was stolen, but you allowed it. You have to deprogram, and it could take years from the theological, just out and out blatantly wrong teachings. It's so wrong when you go right into it. It is so wrong that even the most basic Bible student with any intelligence can tell that there's no way the conclusions that the Jehovah's Witnesses have come to are rational or reasonable given the content of the canon of the Bible. And you need to accept that you've been deceived, and that's the first step to recovery. That the organisation is not safe. It has no duty of care when it comes to your mental health or to the life of your children. I'm not going to go into the sexual abuse that is a plague in the organisation. Look up the Australian Royal Commission. It's a plague. These children have a right to be safe, but they're isolated in the organisation and the predators are sexually abusing them. And thank God the authorities are now starting to hunt these criminals that are disguising themselves as Christian ministers, but really they're just cult pedophiles. They don't even know what the Bible's about. You can do good things without even being a Christian. I know people that aren't Christians that have done way more credible things than a lot of the Christians I know. And don't think for 1 minute that Christians can't be or turn into psychopaths and narcissists. Oh no, we don't talk about that side of Christianity because people just don't understand the content of the Bible and how it warns that these things can happen. You must accept, realize and understand that you've been completely and utterly deceived. That the Watchtower has no remorse or any conscience about the time they've wasted in your life, the way they've programmed you to see life, and what they have done to your life. And when you begin your journey out, look for the ex-Jehovah's Witness members on YouTube who are helping millions of people around the world to understand what's happened to them, how they can find their way to recovery, and how cruel and wicked the Watchtower cult truly is. This is what happens to Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm Reverend Dr. J.W. Morrison, theologist, New South Wales, Australia. Bye for now.